بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم وعلى آله الطاهرين وعلى أصحابه الطيبين ومن استنى بسنتهم إلى يوم الدين ثم أما بعد. So we begin as we should and as we always do with the name of Allah, the most beneficent and the especially merciful. And we ask Him and Him alone to send His peace, His blessings upon our dear and beloved teacher, leader, and guide, and the best of examples for the Muslims and all of humanity, Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon his pure family, his good companions, and all of those who would attempt to follow in their footsteps until the day that we meet our Creator. Allahumma ameen. So, assalamu alaikum, rahmatullah, everyone, and welcome. Jazakallah khair for coming and showing up to come and again go and discuss through the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi. Tonight we're going to be covering hadith number 29, which is narrated by Mu'adh ibn Jabal. And inshallah, we're going to do our best to not take too long today. Inshallah, we know things have changed with daylight savings time. So we'll try, like I said, not to take too long and then have a couple announcements at the end, bidhnillahi ta'ala. But we're going to jump right into it because there's quite a bit to cover. So, make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant me tawfiq. But al-muhim, I know it's a lot of text up there. I'm not going to ask somebody to read it today. I'm just going to read it, inshallah, for the sake of brevity. But it is important that we read the text of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is something that we collectively do, individually that we do, because no doubt there is blessing and guidance in the words of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is something that we should be in the habit of trying to do, like I said, for ourselves, and at the very least being familiar with the words of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in its original form. Not simply just the translation, not simply just, reading, the interpretation of someone else and their estimation of what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said through the translation, right? Because if you are exclusively or only limited to that, no doubt you can still benefit, no doubt you can still learn, no doubt you can still glean the wisdom of the Prophet ﷺ and that of the Quran, right? But it is not the same. No doubt it is not the same as taking it from the pure, unadulterated source. Because when somebody translates something, right, they have their own background, they have their own culture, they have their own interpretation, their own understanding, right? And all of that is and so whenever something is translated, it is always filtered through that, right? And so no doubt, it should be the aspiration of every single Muslim, right, to be trying to learn the Arabic language, right? But also this is just so that, like I said, so that we have a taste of the words of the Prophet ﷺ. طيب. So with that being said, قال المصنف رحمه الله نفعنا وياه بعلمه في الدارين اللهم آمين. عن معاذ بن جبل رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قلت يا رسول الله أخبرني بعمل يدخلني الجنة ويباعدني من النار. قال, meaning the Prophet ﷺ, لقد سألت عن عظيم وإنه ليسير على من يسره الله عليه تعبد الله ولا تشرك به شيئا وتقيم الصلاة وتؤتي زكاة وتصوم رمضان وتحج البيت ثم قال ألا أدلك على أبواب الخير الصوم جنة والصدقة تطفئ الخطيئة كما يطفئ الماء النار والصلاة رجل في جوف الليل ثم تلا بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم تتجافى جنوبهم عن المضاجع حتى بلغ يعملون سورة السجدة ثم قال ألا أخبرك برأس الأمر وعموده وذروة سنامه قلت بلى يا رسول الله قال رأس الأمر الإسلام وعموده الصلاة وذروة سنامه الجهاد ثم قال ألا أخبرك بملاك ذلك كله فقلت بلى يا رسول الله فأخذ بلسانه وقال كف عليك هذا قلت يا نبي الله وإنا لمؤاخذون بما نتكلم به فقال ثكلتك أمك وهل يكب الناس على وجوههم أو قال على مناخرهم إلا حصاد ألسنتهم رواه الترمذي وقال حديث حسن صحيح. So this hadith is narrated on the authority of Mu'adh ibn Jabal, a very notable and important companion, one of the scholars from amongst the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, in spite of being amongst the youngest of the companions. Although but he was considered to be the most knowledgeable amongst all the companions when it came to halal and haram, and that's on the tongue of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, right? So he's the one who's narrating this hadith. He said that I said to the Messenger of Allah. So he was speaking to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He said, "O Messenger of Allah, tell me an act that which will take me into paradise and will keep me away from the hellfire." So I want you to pay attention. What is he asking about? What is he talking to the Prophet, or inquiring to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ about? Right? Out of all the different things that he could possibly ask him, pay attention to what he's asking. Right? What's going to enter me into paradise, and what's going to keep me away from what? What's going to keep him away from what, y'all? From the hellfire. Very important. Pay attention to what he's asking about, and pay attention to the answer of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He said, "You have asked." No, thank you, Siri. "You have asked me about a great matter. Yani something extremely important. Yet it is easy for the one who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy for. First and foremost, the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without associating any partners with Him. This is the first thing that the Prophet ﷺ says. Asking about going to paradise, or what action will bring you to paradise, that Mu'adh asks about, and the answer of the Prophet ﷺ, first thing he says is what? Is the oneness, the tawheed, the singling out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And not only that, further emphasizing, because that's two parts, is also negating that anything else deserves to be worshipped. Negating that anything else needs to be worshipped. So that's the first thing he says. And then to establish the prayer, and to give, to establish the prayer, to pay the zakah, yani to give the charity, to fast in the month of Ramadan, and to make the pilgrimage to the house. I need to make the pilgrimage to where? To Mecca. Tayyib. Then he goes on. So look it. The Prophet ﷺ, as he's often apt to do, is that not only does he give questioners what they need, right? But he gives them even more, right? Showing that the answer that he's gonna give now is the bare, that he already gave, is the bare minimum. What we just read is the bare minimum, the 5 pillars of Islam. Then, right? But that might be enough for some, but others might want more. Others might be more thirsty. Others might be more hungry. Others might want a higher place in paradise. So the Prophet ﷺ, he doesn't stop at the bare minimum. For anybody who wants more, he gives more. So he says what? So the next thing he says is, shall I not guide you towards the means of goodness? Fasting is a shield. Charity, right? Wipes away sins. It's more appropriate to say it puts out sins the way that water extinguishes fire. And then the praying of a man in the depths of the night, right? Then he recited the ayat from Surah Sajda, ayahs number 16 and 17. تَتَجَافَى جُنُوبُهُمْ عَنِ الْمَضَاجِعِ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ خَوْفًا وَطَمَعًا وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِي لَهُمْ مِنْ قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ جَزَاءٌ بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. Right? And it says that Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Anyways, it says that they forsake their sides, right, from sleeping, and they call on their Lord out of fear and deep hope, right? وَطَمَعًا وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. And they give out of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed them with, right? or whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided them for, they give from it. فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِيَ لَهُمْ. And no soul knows what has been hidden from it, from the pleasures that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them for what they used to do. Right? And then, for some reason, the other slide is missing, so I will just translate the last part. And then he says, ثُمَّ قَالَ, shall I not inform you about the head of the entire matter, and the pillar, and the peak of the entire matter? And Mu'adh responds, radiallahu anhu, Bala ya Rasulullah, of course, tell me, what is it? He said, the head of the entire matter is Islam, right? وَعُمُودُهُ, and the pillar of it is the prayer. And the peak and the pinnacle of it is al-jihad, striving in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, and shall I not form you that which heads off all of this, right? And contains all of this. He said, Bala ya Rasulullah, of course, inform me, O Messenger of Allah. And then the Prophet ﷺ grabbed his tongue and he said, Kuffu alayka hada, yani restrain this, i.e. restrain your tongue, right? And then Mu'adh ibn Jabal thought it strange. And he asked the Prophet ﷺ, he says, O Prophet of Allah, will we be held to account for what we say with our tongues? And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, which is like an expression, may your mother be bereaved from you, ثَكُلَتْكَ أُمُّكَ. And it used to be like almost like a curse, right? But the Prophet ﷺ is not like really cursing him, but he's saying almost like, how could you ask this question? You should know better. Of course, what will throw people more so on their faces than what they've reaped and harvested with their statements of their tongue, right? You should know better. Like, how could you ask this question? That's what it means. But it doesn't literally mean, may your mother be bereaved from you, meaning like, may you die. That's what that would mean, right? But that's not what the Prophet's saying. He's saying, how could you ask that question? Of course, no doubt, what people say with their tongues, they will reap, for better or for worse. So now, as far as Mu'adh ibn Jabal, his kunya is Abu Abdurrahman, right? And he's an Ansari, meaning that he was from the residents of Medina, and he was Khazraji, from the Khazraji tribe, where there were two main tribes that were warring factions against each other until the Prophet ﷺ came and he arbitrated between them, right? And that is Al-Aws wal Khazraj, right? And Mu'adh ibn Jabal is from the Khazraji tribe. Anyways, he accepted Islam at the age of 18, right? He accepted Islam at the age of 18, and he was from amongst the most knowledgeable of the companions, Ridwanullahi alayhim. And this is actually taken from a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So it's the Prophet who said he's the most knowledgeable when it comes to halal and haram. And he mentioned a number of different statements about different companions, right? He said, he mentions about Abu Bakr, and then about Umar ibn Khattab and his strength and his resolve in regards to the deen. And then the most shy from amongst the companions, he mentions it, Uthman ibn Affan. And he said, and the one who has the truest and the straightest judgment is Ali radiallahu an, wa afraduhum, and the one who knows the most about fara'id, which are like inheritance laws, right? He said is Zayd ibn Thabit, wa aqra'uhum Ubay, meaning Ubay ibn Ka'b, that he was the best at the recitation of the Quran. Wa a'lamuhum bil halal wal haram, Mu'adh ibn Jabal. And the one who is the most knowledgeable with regards to al-halal and haram, what is allowed, what is not allowed, what is permissible and what is not, the most knowledgeable is Mu'adh ibn Jabal, right? He was considered to be a handsome young man who was known for his forbearance, his generosity, his modesty, and his bravery. So he had a lot of characteristics of an upstanding young man that we would want for all of our young, right, brothers and sisters, that he was someone who was admirable and someone to look up to, right? Not because of how much money he had, not because of, some material things, but because of the strength of character that he had and the type of man that he was. even at the age of 18, right? And I don't know if we can say that nowadays, that someone who would be admirable and someone to be looked up to, right, at the age of 18, 19 years old nowadays. But al-Muhim, he participated in all of the expeditions and the battles with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? No doubt, again, attributing to his bravery, right? And again, because of his, deep knowledge of halal and haram, right, and the rules and regulations of Islam, the Prophet ﷺ later on sent him to Yemen, right, which at that time was predominantly Christians and Jews, right? They were predominantly Christians and Jews, and the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِنَّكَ تَأْتِي قَوْمًا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ فَلْيَكُنْ أَوَّلَ مَا تَدْعُوهُمْ إِلَيْهِ شَهَادَةَ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَأَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. So the Prophet, when he sent him, he said, listen, you're going to be sent, you're going to be a governor, you're going to be a teacher, you're going to be a guide for them, but know that when you go there, they're people from the book. So the first thing you're going to focus on is not politics, it's not some other type of agenda, it's not your leadership. The first thing you're going to focus is on shahadatu an la ilaha illallah, right? To call to the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which for all of us should always be our focus when calling people to Islam, right? It's not about anything else other than glory to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He is real, that He exists, that He has beautiful names and excellent attributes, and He's the only one that deserves to be worshipped, and He's the creator, and He's the sustainer, provider, etc. The focus should be on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of the other things come after. It doesn't mean that there's nothing else that's talked about or discussed, but that is the number one priority. Because if someone had a conversation with you, a colleague or a coworker, and they are convinced that hijab is a wonderful and beautiful thing, and they walk away agreeing with you, and you didn't say anything about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are no closer to Jannah. Even though they agree with you 100%, and they're even convinced, my daughter's gonna wear hijab when I go home. But they don't believe in Allah. They just think it's really beautiful, and they believe, wow, it's so modest, and we really like the way that looks. But if they don't believe in La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, they are no closer to paradise. If they agree with what is happening, for example, in Palestine and Israel, right? And there are many people who, through this, I remember seeing online, a number of people saying they're coming to Islam because of what they're seeing and hearing, which is causing them to look at Islam, look at the Quran. Are they really terrorists? Is this really, what is being told, what's being said about Muslims? So many people are looking at Islam. But now, if someone has a conversation with you and your intention was to make da'wah to them, right? And you use this vehicle of what is happening in the current climate and in the news right now, but you don't say anything about Allah and His Messenger, and they agree with you that Israel is an apartheid state, which it is, and that they are an occupying, colonizing, entity, and they are, and that person agrees with you 100%, and they walk away from you, and they don't believe in Allah and His Messenger, they are no closer to paradise. The focus should be La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. And then anything else, the other things that come after that, the wisdom of the hijab and the beauty of Islam and the fasting and so on and so forth. But that's the priority. Tayyib. And so this is what he taught Mu'adh ibn Jabal. Now mind you, he sent Mu'adh ibn Jabal, who died at the age of 34, right? So he wasn't the oldest of the companions, but he sent him, right? Not Abu Bakr, not Umar, who both were much older than him, right? But he sent him because of his tremendous knowledge, right? In spite of his young age, right? To go and be governor and teacher of Yemen. Al-Muhim. He passed away in the 18th year of the Hijrah, right? At the age of 34. And he narrated 157 ahadith from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So we're going to stop there because we don't want to jump into the hadith and then stop. So we'll pray Salat al-Isha and then jump right back into it after Salat al-Isha, inshallah. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa akhir da'wan alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.